Animals showing emotion can catch you off guard. This crying bear mom led this man to her dying cub, but what happened after that was even more unbelievable. Kyle had always loved nature. As a kid, he spent hours hiking and visiting the animals at the zoo near his house. Later on, he even studied to become a vet so he could help animals every day. It was pretty amazing for him to now treat pets and even work with some of the bigger animals at the same zoo he loved growing up. It felt like everything had come full circle. But being a vet wasn't always easy. Kyle got attached to so many animals that came into his care. Some he had known since they were little, and even when he gave it everything he had, sometimes he still lost them. He knew he probably should have learned to keep some distance, but he just couldn't do it. Each time something bad happened, it broke his heart. Yet when the next patient came in, he found himself caring just as much all over again. After a few years on the job, Kyle realized he needed a place where he could really rest and recharge. Going out with friends in the city was fun, but it didn't give him the deep kind of peace he needed after tough days. For that, he needed to get back to what had always calmed him as a kid, being in nature. There were a few trails near the city, but none long enough to really clear his head. His practice was doing well, so he decided to treat himself to a tiny cabin in the woods. It wasn't on a big piece of land, but it bordered a national park, which meant endless space to hike and explore. Plus, the park was protected land, so he knew it would stay wild forever. It became his little sanctuary. Kyle could sit on the porch for hours, watching birds swoop across the sky or deer wandering by his yard. It was exactly what he needed. No traffic noise, no city buzz, just the pure sounds of nature all around him. After one especially long week, he packed up and headed out to his cabin for some much-needed quiet. He had just dropped his weekend bag inside the cabin, pulled off his work clothes, and laced up his hiking boots. Grabbing an apple from the counter, he headed out for a walk. As he chewed, he took in deep breaths of fresh air and listened to the river rushing somewhere in the distance. His heart had felt like it was racing for days, but now it finally started to slow, and his mind could clear again. He had been walking for a little while when he spotted a bear standing in his path. It was a good distance away, and Kyle knew to keep back, but the bear had other ideas. She started walking toward him. Staying calm, Kyle slowly walked backward, keeping his eyes on her. He knew better than to run, but even with him moving away, the bear kept coming. Then Kyle caught another movement out of the corner of his eye. A little cub had appeared from the trees next to her. That made the situation a lot more serious. A mama bear protecting her cub could be much more dangerous. Kyle knew he had to be extra careful now. With the bear still closing the distance, Kyle realized backing away wasn't working. He needed to try something else. Raising his arms high to make himself look bigger, he stomped his feet and shouted loudly. Hopefully, the brown bear would get scared off and turn away. But something completely unexpected happened. She didn't act the way he thought she would. Kyle had some experience caring for bears at the zoo, and right away he noticed something was off. The bear didn't run, but she also didn't show any of the aggressive signs he would normally expect. It was one of the strangest encounters he had ever had. The mother bear just sat down in the forest. Her cub clambered over her, but it almost looked like the mother was crying. She looked completely worn out and heartbroken. Kyle felt a sharp tug in his chest. Even though it was risky, he carefully moved a little closer to the bear. Maybe she was hurt? She seemed desperate, but her behavior was so different from anything he had ever seen before. Even with all his experience, Kyle was at a loss. All he could do was trust his instincts and try to understand what she needed. As he edged closer, the bear got up, but instead of coming toward him, she turned and slowly started walking toward the river, glancing back at him over her shoulder like she was asking him to come. Kyle's heart was pounding with curiosity. He just had to follow. It wasn't like he was trying to get close to the bear. Honestly, it felt more like she was trying to get close to him, like she was asking for help. Since helping animals was what he had dedicated his whole life to, there was no way Kyle was going to walk away now. The mother bear barely even noticed when her cub started running circles around Kyle, trying to make friends. She stayed completely focused on where she was going. She led him right to the river. There, caught almost in the middle of the water, was a huge mess of fishing nets. The bear went straight up to it. At first, Kyle couldn't figure out why she cared so much about the nets, until the whole thing shifted. That's when he saw it. Another baby bear was tangled up inside. Each time the river rushed over the nets, the little cub was pulled under. It looked like the mother had tried everything she could to tear the nets apart, but they were too heavy and tangled. She needed a human's help, and that's what she had been trying so hard to tell Kyle. There wasn't much time left. The cub already wasn't moving much. Kyle had to act fast. He hadn't brought anything useful with him, not even a pocket knife. And there was no way he could make it back to the cabin and return in time. By then, it would be too late. Thinking fast, he ran along the riverbank, searching the ground until he found a sharp rock. Gripping it tight, he dove into the cold water and swam out to the nets. Kyle hacked and sawed at the ropes. His hands got scraped and bloody, but he didn't stop. Finally, he managed to make enough of a hole to pull the cub free. He scooped the little bear into his arms and swam back to the shore, the mother bear right behind him, staying close but not interfering. Once on the bank, Kyle saw the cub wasn't moving. His heart raced. He quickly started doing compressions, trying everything he knew. After a tense moment, the little bear coughed and started breathing again. Kyle let out a shaky breath and sank back onto the ground, exhausted. A few minutes later, the tiny bear stumbled onto his feet and wobbled straight into his mother's arms. She hugged him tightly, making sure he was okay before letting him go to play with his sibling. Then the little family disappeared quietly back into the woods. When Kyle finally felt strong enough to stand, he started the long walk home. He couldn't believe what had just happened. He knew he'd probably never see them again, but it made him feel so good inside, and he knew he'd have an incredible story to share with his friends. Back at his cabin, Kyle took a long, hot shower. Even though the bear cub had been small, carrying him had left his muscles aching. But it was a good kind of tired. The next morning, Kyle sat out on his porch, sipping his coffee, just soaking in the peace after such an intense day. But then something unbelievable happened. He spotted the mother bear and her cubs coming out of the trees. They had come to visit him. After that day, every time Kyle stayed at his cabin, the mother bear, and later the little cub he had saved, would come by to see him. Thank you for watching. If you loved this heartwarming story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring moments like this one.